So last week we dealt with control flow. Before then, we've done data types. Before then, we've done keywords, we've done identifiers and various areas of Python. So this week we're going to be dealing with what is known as function. We are gradually moving into the core of Python. So which basically means that by the time we get in, we are going higher and higher and higher. So that is why it is very, very important for you to understand everything from the beginning. And, you know, having at least 7 days to practice before the next class. And once nobody asks questions, it means that you have an understanding of what we are doing without asking questions. So as from this week, we're going to be starting a new session called function. So basically, once we function basically is a building block of Python. So we're going to be doing, you learn about what function is, you learn about the syntax, you learn about the components of functions, and you also learn how to create your own function. So I won't rush us in this session. So if we do not finish, which I don't have to say that we're going to finish everything that I have in mind to do, is either I record or we continue from there. Right. So I'm going to create a folder here. By now, everybody should have an understanding of how to use Jupyter, right? So, and also it's important to remember that it's more or less like we are building a house and we are preparing the foundation for the house that we want to build. That's basically what we are doing. And you would have seen that most of the things that we've done, we are using them, the ones we do in the lower stage, we are using them as we move along. So you see that part of what we do last week are going to be incorporated in what we are going to be doing this week, and that is how the trend will continue. So I'm going to create a folder here. I'm going to name the folder, and I'm going to say Python function. So inside the Python function, I'm just going to create a new Python, and I will also rename it to, let's say, I will say Python function, right? I'll say underscore functions. So as I said, in Python, a function is referred to as a block of code. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so as I was saying, I said Python. In Python, a function is a block of organized code that has a name, which is used for or to perform a single and a specific task. A function is a block of organized code or reusable code, which is used to perform a single or specific task. Right. So the purpose of a function in terms of the reusable, it follows the concept of dry. It follows the concept of dry, which means don't repeat yourself. So that when you have a function, it is reusable. That function is reusable, right? So it is important to know that a function has a name. And the purpose of a function is to perform a single and specific task. Function can take what we call argument, and it can return value. These are points that I think you should be taken into consideration. A function can take argument and it can return value. So what exactly is the objective of a function? The objective of a function is to help you break your program into smaller and what we call modular chunks of code. Because as your program grows larger and larger, function assists you to make it more organized and manageable. And also remember that I said to you that it's important to have an understanding of how to solve your problem. When you are faced with a problem, you must have an idea of how you want to solve it. Once you have an idea of how you want to solve it, right, that will assist you on how to write your code, which is basically the same or the mistake that people make. That is when we discuss the concept of algorithm and pseudocode in our last class, where I tell you algorithm is a stepwise refinement solution to a problem. And I remember using the concept of somebody who wants to get married. Now, the problem of that person is getting married. The objective is to get married. And I highlighted that when you have such a problem, you have to list the various steps that you are going to use to achieve that objective or to solve that problem. Solving a problem is equivalent to achieving an objective. So please note. So function basically improves the efficiency of your code, and it reduces error in your code because of its reusability capability. Right. There are two types of function. There are two types of function. One is the built-in function, and the second one is the user-defined function. Right. So a built-in function basically is a function that comes with Python. A built-in function is a function that comes with Python. And we have been using those functions in most of the things that we've been doing. For instance, the print function that we've been using is a function, right? The input function that we've been using, the range function, the type function, right? So remember, let me now give you an example like this. Let's say for I in range, I now say 1,100. I say print. Remember we did this last week. And I say end equal this. And I run. Right? So that printed 1 to 100 for us. But if you want to print 1 to 100, you know what to do. I mean 1 to 99. If you want to print 1 to 100, you have to do this, and it will print it in that way. It will stop at 100. Remember that, right? These are the arguments that we passed to this function when we call this function. We call the range function, right? And we pass this argument to it. But when we are defining this function, what we pass here is not called argument, it's called parameter. I'm going to explain to you as we move along. But this is a built-in function. We are not interested in the built-in function because it has been defined for us. A user-defined function, right, is a function that is created by you explicitly, and you create it according to the requirement of that function, the requirement of what that function is going to perform. That's a user-defined function. That is what we are interested in. We want to be able to define our function and possibly also give it out for people to use. Because the functions that we are using are created by some people. So, what is the syntax of defining a function? What is the syntax of defining a function? Remember, I also explained to you that syntax is how you perform something. So, what is the syntax of defining a function? That is very, very important to understand, right? We're just going to say, right. So to do this, what you have to do is you have to define, you say def, the function name, and here, what you pass inside here, remember, like I said, it's called parameter. Parameter, let's say parameter 1, parameter 2. And after that, you put this there. Once you do that, it gives you automatic indentation, remember. And inside your function, you can put docstring, what you call docstring. docstring. That is going to inform whoever wants to use your function what the function is doing. Are you with me? That is going to inform whoever wants to use your function what the function is doing. And after that, the next thing you do is the function body. Right? The function body. And inside the function body, you write some code. And then the next thing you're going to do is basically you return a value. That is optional. You return a value. You return value. Right? So that is basically how to define a function. Now, let me explain these one after the other so that you can have an understanding of what this is doing, because it's very, very important for you to know how to define a function. The first thing you have to do is to use the name def. Is a keyword. Is a keyword that marks the start of the function header. Once you say def, Python knows that you are defining a function. Once you say def, Python knows that you are defining a function. Right? So the next thing you do is your docstring, which is optional. Right? Is your function name, which is a must. It is the name that uniquely identify, right? It is the name that uniquely identify the function. It uniquely identify the function. Are you with me? So remember, function name follows the naming convention, the naming rule of identifier, which I gave to us at the beginning of this training. Then you put your parameter. Please note, your parameters might be more than one, might be more than two. That parameter, they are the value that are passed to the function, and it is optional. A function can exist without parameters. Please note, a function can exist without parameter. The next thing is your colon. The colon signifies the end of the function header. It signifies the end of a function of the function header. Right? Next is your docstring. Your docstring basically is the documentation string, and it is used to describe what the function does. It is used to what? To describe what the function does. The documentation string is used to describe what the function does. Are you with me? Now, the return value is a keyword as well, and it is used to return a value from the function. It is used to return a value from the function. Now listen to this. When you have a return statement with no argument, it will return none, right? When you have a return statement with no argument, it will return none. Sometimes a function without a return none, without a return value, when it is called and it is not called directly, we also return none. So it is also important to note that a function is useless when it is not called. If you define a function, you create a function, and that function, when you run it, is not going to work. It's only going to work when you call it. You have to call it before it works. Right? Let's give an example. I'm now going to say def. Let's say head. Let's say head number. I'm going to say here number 1, number 2. Right? So I'm going to put a comment here to explain the syntax that I gave earlier, right? I'm going to say, let's come here. Oh, sorry. Let's come here. I'm going to say function. Please give me 1 second. So I'm going to say function name is head number, right? And then we have parameters. Oh, sorry, parameters, which are number 1, right? And number 2, right? So I come, oh, sorry about that. I need to come here. So remember, automatically that indentation takes place. And when I say print, now take a look at this. In our own user-defined function, we are using built-in function. We are putting things together, right? We are putting things together. So here I say print number 1, right? And I say concatenate them, comma, and I say number 1, right? This is, let's come here. This is the function body. But let's say I want some other people to use my function. I want the other people to use my function. You've got to do what we call docstring to explain what the function is doing. So I can come here to say, now look at this. I will say the purpose of this function is to add 2 numbers together. You can give as much explanation as you want. You can explain what each part of the code is doing. It's very, very important, but it's not a must. Docstring is optional. I can say we are writing this docstring for, I'll say, academic purpose. Let's just leave it for now at that. Now, I'll come here. This is a function body, right? And I'll say print again. And I'll say number number 2. And I'll come here and I'll say number 2. This is also a function body, right? We are still part of the function. Now, I can say again, create a variable, call it addition, and say equal number 1 plus number 2. Right? This is also function body. And I say return addition. Right? If I run this, if there is no error, it's not going to do anything. There's no error. It's not going to do anything. How is it going to work? We are now going to call it. Let's say we say result equal. You now call it the way we call this range. You see, where we say range, and then you say add number. When you pass parameters into the function, please listen to this. When you pass parameters into the function, when you are calling the function, you must pass arguments to that function. The same number of parameters that you pass into the function, it must be the same number of arguments that you pass into the function when you are calling it. So if you don't pass the same number of arguments, you're going to have an error. It's going to give you an error. Let me give you an example. So if I say number 1, let's say I say 5, 6, for instance, and I run this, you see, it says add number missing 1 required positional argument. If you pass, let's assume we pass 2 number, not even assume, yes, we pass 2 number, and I pass 3 arguments. We define 3 parameters, and I pass 3 arguments. If I run it, it's going to give an error. It says hard number takes 2 positional error, but 3 positional argument rather, but 3 were given. It must be exactly the same number of parameter that you pass as your argument. So if I say 56, 57, right? If I run this, that's happened, right? You see, if you look at this, when I run the function, the fact that I call the function, right? Something happened. It only called this. It says number 1, 56, number 2, 57, as you can see. If I do not call, because I say return addition, I have to call this result. It's either I say result this way, you see, or I might just want to be innovative and I say print, you know, like we normally say print, and I'll say result is, I just do this, I do this, and I'll say this, and I'll run this, right? If I run this, see, it says result is 113. That's how to define a function. Remember we said you can also define a function without any parameter, right? You can define a function without any parameter and it's going to work. So Remember, this is a function. Let's complete this. This is a return statement, right? And this is a function call. This is a function call, right? Okay, so we also have defining a function without any parameter. Or let's say parameters. I'm going to do this. Right. You can declare a function without any parameter, right? Okay, so as I said, a function can be declared without a parameter. Declaring parameter in the function is an optional step that you've got to follow. So let's say I say function, sorry man, def, let's say greeting. There's no parameter, right? And I say print welcome to the Python training series. We are now in the function session. Let's say sessions, right? You can also call the function here, even immediately after the function, but you have to make sure that you come here, you don't follow the indentation, right? So if I say greet, this will work. So it's supposed to be greeting, not greet. So if I say greet, see that appears, right? So that's basically, now let's redo this to make sure that it doesn't have an argument. Let's say this. I'm going to take this away, right? And I'm going to say number one. I'm going to say number one, let's say is equal to 78. Doesn't matter. Whatever number you put, number two, let's say is equal to 120 fragmented. So I can say addition, right? Addition equal number one plus number two. I might not want to return. I can say print right? Addition. Remember, addition is a variable. And then I can call, sorry about that. I can then call this function and say head number. And you have to put this there. If I run this, see what happens. Because it has no function. Everything has been defined inside the function. Right? So let's do one more example and say maybe you want to, somebody tell me what is it that we can do? Okay, for the sake of time, let's say we want to generate full name. So I'm going to say def get full name. There's no function. I mean, there's no parameter. And I will say first name, right, equal, let's say, Olalekan. And I say second name equal Samuel, for instance. I can declare another variable just and say space equal, right? I can then come here to say full name equal, just perform your concatenation. You can say first name plus space plus second name. I can then say print full name. If I run this, nothing is going to happen. I cannot assign. What is that? Oh, sorry, there was a mistake here. This is supposed to be equal. And nobody saw it. It's supposed to be equal. I mean, plus, not equal. That's why the error is. So if I do this, you see nothing happens, right? But if I call get full name, if I call get full name, right? You see what happened? Okay, assignment. This assignment is optional. It's up to you. If you do it, fine. If you don't do it, I'm not going to ask for it. So I say use the input function to get the name from the user and display to get first name, to get first, and let's say use the input user to get first and last name from the user and display the full name. Perform this in a function. Perform this in a function. Right? Okay. I will come back to that assignment. Right? So you can define a function with parameters and also return value. You can also define a function with parameters and return value. Right? Like I said, I've already told you what parameters are. And when you define a function with a parameter, when you are calling that function, you have to pass the same number of arguments as that parameter to the function. Remember, I need to clarify this. When we did this, when we pass parameter here, right? And when we call this function, we pass 56 and 57 there. Python automatically then knows that these parameters you define here, their data types are integer, right? That's what Python automatically knows. It will just assign integer variable to this. Right. So please note, if I define a function, right? Let's say I define a function and I say, let's say we say greetings that we did the other time. Let me call this. So I'm just going to copy this here, right? And I pass there and I say name as the parameter. So this is only for single parameter, right? And I said welcome, right? Now here, instead of me to say print, I can come here and say, let's say I say message equal name. That's the parameter, the variable. Now, note also that the parameters that you pass here are actually variable. I think I made that clear. So name plus, right? And I say here, I say comma, and I say here, and I copy this. Actually, as a matter of fact, I'm going to cut this. And I say here, right? Now, I can then come here and say, let's say we then come here to say return message, right? And I can come here and say print, and I will call greetings, and I'll call greeting. Is it greeting? Yeah, it's greeting. And I will call greeting. If I call this greeting, we're going to, if I have, okay, let's first do this. Let's call greetings separately, right? So let's call it separately. If I run this, everything is fine, right? So if I did this, if I now do this and say print this, is definitely going to give us an error. Somebody tell me what is the type of error that it's going to give us? So if I run this, says missing one positional argument. Right. Why? Because I need to pass the variable there. Now, if I want to pass a name, you remember a name is a string, right? You have to put this there. Let's say I say Olalekan Samo. And I rerun it. You see what happened? It gives me what we did there, right? So you can, for instance, let's say you say square number, for instance, square number, because yeah, let's say you say def square number, and then here you say y, and then you do this and you say return x, or let's say x multiplied by I think I should use y because I want to square it. Y multiplied by y. Sorry, y. Right? If I call this, I say print. If I call this variable, I mean this function, I say square number, and I pass, because I want to pass integer, I can just say 10. You do this, it gives you 100. Right? Now, let's do something. because I move into the mathematics part of it, right? So let's say what are the things that we normally do in mathematics? Like, okay, let's say def area of a circle, right? And I say, how do we calculate area of a circle? We have what you call radius, right? We have radius, right? Then here we have, let's say we have pi equal, you all know that, right? You all know that. Pi equal 3.14. That's in number mathematics. We can create a variable and say area equal, what is the formula for to calculate area of a circle? I think is I think it's pi that we have defined multiplied by r, which is our radius, right? Multiplied by radius. I think it's radius times 2 raised to power 2, right? It's radius raised to power 2. How do we do raised to power here, right? When you do star star, you then say 2, right? So if I then come here to say return area, right? If I run this, it's not going to give us anything. If I say print and I call that area of a circle and I put a number, put any number, that's your radius, right? If I say, what's our radius? If I say 10, that is 3.14 multiplied by 100, right? That gives us 314, right? So assignment. Let's say assignment 2. We'll call this assignment 1. I'm going to say write a simple function to calculate the, I think we do calculate the perimeter of a rectangle, right? Okay, so to assist you, I don't know the formula myself. Perimeter, okay, there's a perimeter of circle and also the, so this is the formula. Perimeter is 2 bracket LW, right? So now let's now go to the algorithm that I said about this. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy this. Perimeter is 2 length plus breadth, right? But I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to give you the algorithm and the serial code. So here, oops. Okay, just so perimeter. So let's say perimeter, right, of a rectangle P equal 2 of length plus breadth, right? Is a breadth of breadth. Anyway, you get an understanding of what I mean, right? Now, what we are going to do is definitely define step 1. Define a function and pass the parameter. What is your parameter? Parameter is your parameters, length and breadth. So which means you have 2 parameters, right? That you are going to pass, length and breadth. Step 1, this is step 1. So step 2, just like we did in the example above, we then say define a variable perimeter equal to, right, multiply by length plus breadth. I think the breadth should have D. I suppose so. But you understand what that means. Breadth is what they call width anyway. So now what do? You return step 3. You return the perimeter because that's what you want to display. Step 4. Call the function and pass the length and breadth argument. That's simple enough. Now, let's go into, we've already done, I think I've done argument with 2. These are an example of 2 arguments, more than 1 argument, right? That's already been done. But let's do it I've also done it for first name for string, right? Where I did, where is that? Where did I do full name? I think I did full name, yeah, here. But this is empty, right? This is an empty one. So I want to pass an argument into this. We can also do it in such a way that we can pass an argument into it, right? And here, I'm just going to say first name. Just follow what I'm doing. Say first name, comma. I'm going to say second name here, right? Those are 2 parameters. You don't have to put the space there because the space, so you can say here, you can say space. Oh, I actually have it already. So let me just delete this. Right. And then you say full name equal is the same thing. And then here, instead of saying that, you say return, right? Full name, right? If you run this, nothing is going to happen until you call the function. You can say print, you can say full name, excuse me. You can say full name, right? And you say here, and then you can say concatenate, you can say get full name, and then you pass. If I run this, it's going to give us an error because we don't have, okay, so this gives us an error because we didn't pass the parameters. So let's say I say Ademola, comma, remember, Oluwole. You also have to put this, otherwise you're going to get an error. So let me show you. If you do this, to tell you error, name Oluwole is not defined. But if I then come here to put this, and I run this, say full name, Ademola Oluwole, right? You can use the same. Did we do return when we did addition? We didn't do return, right? How do we return when we do addition? So what do you call it? I don't know, say hard number, right? So I can come here to say def, right? Hard number, and here I'll say number 1, comma, number 2, right? So once I come here to do this, I then say sum or addition, right? Equal number 1 plus number 2, right? And then here I say return addition, right? I can come here now to say, if I run this, it's not going to do anything. If I then print, I say, like we did there, I say sum of the, this must be in quotes, remember? So I say sum of the 2 numbers is, and I do this, and I do this, and I say add number, and I pass 25,89 there. Then it's going to give us that function, right? Now, let's try and do, I want to try and see how we can implement minus. Let's say I'm just going to call this, it's the same thing. Look, I'm just going to perform something here. I'm going to call this, I'm going to say add number, and I'm going to say calculate. Let's say calculate age. How do you calculate age? You say you need to know the formula to calculate age. How do we calculate age? It's basically the current year, right? The current year minus the birth year. That's how to calculate age. It's very, very easy. The current year minus the birth year. So if I say, so let's say current underscore year, and here we'll say birth underscore year. And here I'll say current age equal current year. So saying, say minus birth year. And here, what do we do? We'll say return current age, right? If you run this, nothing is going to happen. Now, if you now call, you can call, you can say print, and you say age. But you see, instead of calling print, it's not a must. Let me actually change direction. You can say age equal, right? And you say calculate age. And then you say 2022, that's the current year, 2022, minus, right? That's equal to minus the current year. Let's assume 1965, right? If you do this, it says missing one additional, right? Oh, sorry. This is supposed to be comma. Sorry about that. So this is supposed to be comma. So if I run this, it doesn't give me anything. But it's, if you want it to give you something, you just call age. So that's the age of the person, 57 years. But you can say, you can then come here to say print the age is right. The age is, and you call age. You see, but that's why I normally do print from the beginning, because this is going via long route. But what that means is that you can do as you wish with it. Any question, guys? Any question? I'm going to stop here.